Chief Engineer Maria Santos stood in the salvage bay of Luna Station, staring at what the Galactic Trade Consortium had generously called surplus materials. Around her, piles of twisted metal, burned-out drive components, and shattered hull plating stretched across the massive hangar, the remains of a dozen alien warships that had been deemed too damaged for repair. "This is what they're offering us?" asked Captain James Mitchell, kicking a piece of what might have once been a Vorthan plasma conduit. 20 years of loyal service to the consortium, and they give us their garbage? The insult was deliberate. Earth's naval forces had requested modern warships to help patrol the dangerous frontier sectors, only to be told that junior member species weren't qualified for advanced military technology. Instead, they'd been offered the consortium's industrial waste at full market price. Maria knelt beside a twisted piece of luminary crystalline armor, running her scanner over its fractured surface. "You know what, Captain? Maybe this is exactly what we need." "How do you figure that?" "Because this isn't garbage to us. This is a puzzle, and humans are really, really good at puzzles." 6 months later, Admiral Thexvar of the Hegemony Third Fleet received an emergency transmission as his ships prowled the Epsilon Centauri trade routes, hunting for easy prey among the merchant convoys. "Admiral, we have a contact approaching from the inner system. Single vessel, configuration unknown." Thexvar's reptilian features twisted into a predatory grin. Lone ships meant easy pickings, especially in this sector, where consortium patrols were notoriously weak. "Identification? The ship is broadcasting Earth Defense Force codes, but Admiral..." His sensor officer paused, confusion evident in his voice. "The configuration doesn't match any known human vessel design. Put it on screen." What appeared on the tactical display defied easy categorization. The ship looked like something that had been assembled from the wreckage of a dozen different vessels, asymmetrical, patchwork, with hull sections that clearly came from multiple species welded together in configurations that shouldn't have been structurally sound. "It's a human salvage ship," Thexvar laughed. "They're trying to patrol consortium space with rebuilt garbage. This will be amusing." The ship that approached his fleet looked more like a flying junkyard than a warship. Sections of Vorthan hull plating were grafted onto what appeared to be a Corax engine assembly, with luminary crystal formations sprouting from impact points like technological coral. Weapon mounts seemed to have been improvised from mining equipment, and the drive signature showed power outputs that fluctuated wildly. "Open a channel," Thexvar commanded. "Let's see what kind of fool captains this monstrosity." The face that appeared on his screen was unmistakably human, a middle-aged woman with grease stains on her uniform and a smile that made seasoned pirates nervous. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the UES Patchwork. Hegemony vessels, you are in violation of consortium shipping lanes. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." The bridge crew erupted in laughter. The Patchwork was maybe a third the size of Thexvar's flagship, and its jury-rigged appearance suggested it might fall apart if they looked at it too hard. "Captain Vasquez," Thexvar replied, "I suggest you run home before my fleet reduces your scrap heap to its component atoms." "Admiral, I should probably mention that while my ship might look like scrap to you, we rebuilt it with some very specific improvements in mind." "Such as?" "Well, for starters, we discovered that Vorthan hull materials become incredibly resilient when you layer them with Corax shock absorption, gel and reinforce the whole thing with crystallized luminary energy matrices. Turns out, mixing technologies that were never meant to work together can produce some interesting results." Thexvar was about to order his ships to open fire when his weapons officer called out in alarm. "Sir, the human ship is powering up weapons systems, but I'm reading energy signatures I don't recognize." "What do you mean you don't recognize them?" "The power output is..." "Admiral, it's reading higher than our entire fleet combined." On the tactical display, the patchwork was indeed powering up, but not in any way that followed conventional design principles. Energy was cascading through the ship's mismatched hull sections, in patterns that seemed random, until suddenly they weren't. The improvised systems were somehow amplifying each other, creating resonance effects that turned salvaged components into something unprecedented. "Captain Vasquez," Thexvar said slowly, "what exactly did you do to that ship?" "We fixed it," Elena replied cheerfully. "See, when the consortium gave us all this worthless scrap, they made one crucial mistake. They assumed we'd try to repair each piece according to its original specifications." The energy readings from the human ship continued climbing past what should have been physically possible. Instead, Elena continued, "We asked ourselves, what happens if you take the best features from a dozen different technological traditions and combine them in ways their original creators never imagined? Impossible. You can't just mix incompatible technologies. Sure you can. You just have to be creative about it. For instance, Korrak's power systems are incredibly stable but limited in output. Vorthan energy matrices are powerful but unstable. Luminary crystals can store massive amounts of energy but can't regulate flow. The patchwork was now glowing with patterns of light that seemed to flow through its hull like luminous blood vessels. But if you use Korrak's regulators to stabilize Vorthan matrices while channeling the output through luminary crystals, configured as amplification nodes, Elena's smile widened. "Well, you get something that shouldn't exist according to galactic engineering principles." Thexvar's tactical officer was frantically recalibrating his sensors. "Admiral, the human ship's weapons are showing power levels equivalent to a dreadnought-class vessel." "How is that possible?" "Because," Elena explained, as if lecturing children, "humans have a saying, one person's trash is another person's treasure. You gave us the technological equivalent of spare parts, and we turned them into something completely new." The weapons that emerged from the patchwork's hull were indeed improvised mining lasers, reconfigured with luminary focusing crystals, kinetic projectile systems that fired Vorthan plasma-enhanced rounds, and energy weapons that seemed to bend space-time around their discharge points. "The real beauty," Elena continued, "is that because we built this ship from salvaged components, it's completely unique. Your tactical computers have no idea how to defend against it because nothing like it has ever existed before." Thexvar found himself facing something unprecedented, a human ship that had been literally cobbled together from junk, but somehow performed like the product of centuries of advanced engineering. "Last chance, Admiral," Elena said. "Withdraw from consortium space or learn exactly what happens when humans have 6 months, unlimited scrap metal, and a complete disregard for conventional engineering wisdom." As the patchwork's improvised weapons locked onto his fleet, Admiral Thexvar realized that the Galactic Consortium had made a critical error. They had given humanity their garbage, expecting gratitude. Instead, they had given humanity raw materials and underestimated what desperation, creativity, and complete disregard for impossible could accomplish. "All ships," he commanded, his voice heavy with grudging respect, "withdraw from the system. Best speed." As the hegemony fleet retreated, Elena Santos, former salvage engineer turned captain of the galaxy's most unlikely warship, made a note in her log, "Human ingenuity, 1. Galactic conventional wisdom, 0. The patchwork had become living proof that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can give humans is something you think is worthless.